I live in a pretty old house that's been turned into a rental property. Ever since I moved in, things have been weird. It first began with noises, which I wrote off as old house noises. I've had company over, and they always feel very anxious when hearing the noises and ask me how I feel safe when I'm alone. I just tell them I'm used to it. Then I moved my cat in from my parents. Yes, I know that cats tend to have a weird personality, but mine began acting differently. She first started staring off into corners of the room, looking alarmed. I assumed it was weird cat behaviour, until she started waking me up over it. I tried to take a nap with her on the couch, and wake up to her meowing and staring behind me with a wild look. I want to preface this by saying I have had sleep paralysis, and I know what it's like. I was fully awake during both of these incidents, and I could move my body. The first one, my cat woke me up when I was trying to sleep for work the next morning. When I opened my eyes, I saw writing all over my walls. I kept blinking, but I couldn't make out what any of it said. Eventually it went away. I slept on the couch. This happened last night. I was awake because sometimes I have insomnia issues. Anyways, I was lying with my eyes closed trying to fall asleep when I felt pressure on my bed by my foot. I immediately thought it was my cat hopping onto the bed to sleep, like she does. I looked down, but there was nothing there. I still felt it. I slid my leg under the spot of pressure, and I could slide my leg around with ease, like a hand was simply resting on the bed rather than pushing down. I slid my leg underneath and shook it. The pressure let off like someone lifted their hand. I want to add that I live with my significant other, and they claim they haven't had any strange experiences. I believe it's because he's not paying attention. I'm a female living in Arizona, a place known for paranormal encounters, extraterrestrial experiences, and all manner of weird hoodoo shit. Now admittedly, I love the paranormal, and have had a few minor experiences up to this point in my life. But what I experienced just an hour ago takes the cake. If you've ever been to the Southwest, you know one thing about the nights. They're dark, pitch black. Anyway, it's about 11:30 at night, and I've dropped my friend off at his house in the middle of nowhere after a day of hanging out, playing games, and watching one of my favourite horror flicks. I guess I was a touch on edge, and the fact that it had rained all day and the sky was still shrouded by dark clouds that were blocking any and all natural moonlight from helping me see may not have made it much better. The lights on my truck are admittedly not the strongest, and with so little light and a slippery road, you've got to be aware of everything to be safe. So I'm driving down a fairly well-lit but deserted stretch of road, a few miles long to start heading back to civilization. All of a sudden, this chill, not really a chill, but a sensation of nope, just licks at the back of my neck. And I'm coming up on this odd blue light that's hitting the street in front of me, which is already slightly jarring, given the sickly yellow colour of the streetlights around it. The second I pass under the blue light, it goes out, and I see a huge shadow pass over the road silently in front of me. At this point, I'm getting nervous, because this is a bit too much for my already freaked out self. It doesn't get better from there either. I finally reach the highway, and I have the option to turn onto a back road that's under a ton of construction, or go down to the highway and get home from there. Naturally, an abandoned back road with heavy construction losers, and I turn onto the highway. About this time, a smaller truck starts really flooring it, like climbing up my bumper as I'm headed towards home. People drive like this in Arizona, constantly want to go 30 above the speed limit, and if not that, then getting so far up your ass you'd think they were a thong. So it wasn't particularly abnormal. At first. Basically, I'm driving down the highway, and I see my turnoff coming up, so I signal, and the second I do, so does this dude behind me in the truck. No big deal. The next turnoff comes up. This one's left. And wouldn't you believe it? The truck guy does the same a second or two I have to signal. Again, not too freaky. But then I merge into the far right lane once I make the turn, and so does the truck guy. this point it's getting weird, but I haven't given up hope. So I continue past the main entrance of the strip mall that's near my house, and the second I signal to turn again and then merge into the far right lane once more, the truck guy does the same, staying very close on my tail, and always signalling just a moment after me. At this point, all my memories of hearing people saying they were followed kicks in, and I'm trying to think about how I can ensure I don't lead this creep right to my front door. So it hits me. Make 3 consecutive turns in the same direction, and if they're following you, you'll know, because 3 turns leads you in a circle. So I think, sure, there's a back entrance to the mall, so I pretend to turn in there. I turn towards the mall, stopping at the right turn lane, and the truck guy whizzes past me. I take a breath and go back up the road towards my house. I'm determined to get this guy's plates, just in case. I did too. I repeated the numbers over and over in my head and out loud in the silence of the cab of my truck. This time, luckily, I was the one following, and it made me feel safer, more in control. I watch the truck guy turn onto a street, and once I see he's gone, I drive past and double check in my rear view that the guy isn't back behind me again. Luckily, I don't see him, but right about now, I'm really starting to get the creeps. I'm only a mile or 2 from my house now, and everything is starting to come to a calm. I make it home, looking around before I hop out of my truck and hold my keys close, my finger on the panic button. For those of you who don't know, a panic button on a car's fob can be crazy handy. Keep those keys in your hand when walking alone on a dark street or in a dark place. If someone gets close to you, hold that button down, and the alarm will blare and every set of eyes in the area will be on you in a matter of minutes. And you can bet that whoever's trying to get close won't stick around with all the witnesses peeking out to see what the racket is. Finally, I get inside, and I realise just as I'm getting to my bedroom, I forgot to take the trash cans to the curb. So it's midnight now, and here I am, dragging a set of cans down my driveway in the pitch dark. Something again doesn't feel right. It's so quiet. No crickets, no birds, not even bats are flying around. Then, as I'm glancing around suspiciously, trying to see anything in the darkness, I spot it. Near the open desert at the end of my street, a tall, pale man is standing just outside of the glow of a neighbour's garage light. Just standing there, staring. There were no discernible facial features, just an extremely tall, pale and lanky form. At this point, I've seen enough, and I sprint back into the house as my dog starts barking like crazy. I watched the garage door close and then ran right to my room. I've been hearing scratches on my bedroom window, but I'm too scared to open the blinds and peek out. What if whatever is scratching back is staring back when I do? I've got a blade right next to my bed. Not taking any more chances with the creepy shit tonight. Let's just hope I make it till morning with whatever this thing scratching my window is outside. A couple of years ago, I was working at a job with somebody who told me, pretty much from the point I met her, that she was psychic. Now, I'm a believer in the paranormal, in psychics, in energy, all that jazz. It wasn't a stretch for me to believe she might be telling the truth, but I can assure you now that I very much do believe that she is the real deal. When the activity started, it was just one very small thing. I had a little Arctic fox plushie I kept on my bed, and at one point, I would come home to it being dead in the center of my bed. It was only ever this one plushie, always in the middle of my bed. I have a dog, and even though she had never moved any of my plushies around before, I kind of shrugged it off and decided it was probably her moving it each day while I was at work. For days in a row, I would come home to this little fox just sitting there. I'd move it back to its proper spot each day, only to find it in the middle of the bed yet again when I came home from work the next evening. It was weird, but again, I just shrugged it off as my dog doing these things. The next thing was a bit weirder. I would have vivid dreams, or at least I think they were dreams, where I would be laying in bed in the dark, and suddenly I'd feel spiders crawling on my exposed skin. Anything over my blanket would have the sensation of spiders running across it. I would jump out of bed, fully awake at that point, and turn on my light and investigate. I never found a single spider or bug anywhere. The third thing I experienced was the very last thing I could try to explain away. I was laying in bed one night, kind of drifting off as I listened to a horror narrator on YouTube, something I accredited to what I saw. As I was laying on my back, facing the ceiling and the top of my headboard, which is incredibly high, as I have one of those combo bed dresser headboard things. It's hard to explain, but basically my headboard is a tall dresser with cabinets and drawers surrounding my actual mattress. And the part above my bed is the alcove with mirrors and 2 built-in lights that sit inside it, with the top of the headboard dresser being what the lights were fixed into. Anyway, I had a light on the headboard turned on, so as I was blinking in and out of sleep while listening to these stories, I opened my eyes only to see a small black shadow quickly duck behind the ridge of the top of my headboard. I blinked a few times, but I didn't see the shadow again. However, I passed it off by telling myself it was probably my imagination from being so tired, and I turned off my light and went to sleep. The fourth and final experience leading up to the end of the story is the one that made me stop denying something was definitely happening. One night, I was doing my routine of listening to scary stories and relaxing in bed, and went to plug in my cell phone. The place where I plug my phone in is right next to where I used to keep my chunky rubber bracelets. You know, the ones you get from Hot Topic. So I go to plug my phone in, and as I turn over to put the charger in the outlet, I see not a foot from my face, one of my rubber bracelets move at least an inch to the right, directly in front of me. It didn't roll. It slid across the wooden surface. I sat up straight, surprised. I knew what I saw. There was no explaining that away. I just kind of sat there for a few minutes in a what the hell kind of shock, and eventually plugged my phone in and went to bed. At this point in the story, I need to tell you that I have not once mentioned these experiences to anyone. Not my family, not my boyfriend, not my co-workers, nobody. This is important, because the next day, after I saw that bracelet move, I went into work. As I sat down at the break room table, only one other person was in the room at the time. You guessed it, it was my psychic co-worker. The moment my butt hit the chair, she casually asked me, "So what's going on in your room?" Stunned, I took a moment to compose myself and then explained that I thought there was something, but I wasn't sure. She nodded and said, "Oh yeah, you have a trickster in your room. It probably got in through your mirrors." I was shocked, because to my knowledge, she had never seen my bedroom. She never even saw pictures that I can remember. There's a chance looking back, I showed her a picture of my Halloween setup in my room before this, but I honestly can't remember. Either way, her words shocked me. I asked her what she thought I should do about it, and she told me to sage my room, especially my mirrors, and tell it to leave. When I went home that night, I did just that. I grow sage in my backyard, so I make bundles to smudge my house on occasion. I went around my room, smudging my closet, my whole room, and my mirrors, ending at the window I had open on the far side of my bedroom. As soon as I got to the window to finish my smudging, the whole frickin' thing just burst into flames. I had to immediately put the smudge stick out, because it was just frickin' ignited the second I got to the window. Immediately, I texted my co-worker and told her what happened, and she explained that the sage bursting into flames was the entity leaving, a final trick as it went away. I closed the window and put the sage away, and that was the end of that. I never had anything like what had occurred in the weeks prior happen again, but I have to say that after the whole thing was said and done, I got curious and looked up tricksters, and what came up kind of cemented that this was in fact very real for me. One of the ones listed was a spider trickster, and another was a fox. I'm not sure which one it was, but considering it kept moving my fox plushie, I figure maybe that's why. Last year, between 5 to 7 months ago, I had a few experiences with something that seemed to have a penchant for messing with phones. A little side info to start the story off. I have a phone that requires a password in order to be shut completely off, and it doesn't have my or anyone else's fingerprint as a password either. So the first thing that happened to start this off was that I woke up one day to my cell phone being unplugged from both my actual phone and the wall outlet itself, as well as being moved from the shelf I put it on when I went to sleep that night to a different nearby shelf. It didn't exactly scream paranormal, but it was weird, and so I didn't really think much of it. I figured I just moved it at some point during the night and didn't remember, even though I've never done anything like that before. The second thing that happened brings up to the preliminary info I gave about how my phone shuts off. It's a process, and you really can only shut the phone off after you've unlocked it, which is why this struck me as much odder than the first occurrence. It's kind of my nightly routine to plug my phone in, turn on scary story narrations on YouTube, and leave it playing on a long video to help me fall asleep. I do this daily, and this isn't something that has happened before or since. Essentially, I went to bed following my normal nightly routine and woke to my phone being completely shut off. I woke up, reached over to check the time on my phone, and noticed it was completely off. It was weird, but I figured for some reason my phone wasn't charging during the night and died. So I tried to turn it on expecting to get a no battery sign or whatever, only to find it at 100% once it booted up. It was weird, and I ended up joking to my family that a ghost turned my phone off. I didn't actually mean it, but I still decided better safe than sorry due to my previous trickster experience. I went to bed that night, and as I was sitting in my room, I spoke out to the room and said something along the lines of, "Hey, if there's anything in here, please don't mess with me or my dog, and please don't mess with my phone. I need it to wake up for work, and so it's very important you don't mess with any of my electronics, okay? You can stick around as long as you don't do anything to mess with me, my dog, or my stuff." And left it at that. After that, my phone didn't turn off, wasn't unplugged, and didn't move again. I kind of just shrugged it off after that until one night I woke from a dead sleep in the middle of the night, rolled over, opened my eyes for just a moment, and saw something. So here's the weird part. This thing I saw was cute. Like, it wasn't a person. I can't even really describe it, but it just felt cute. I'm not sure what I believed it was, but it was little, like a little child. I got this weird vibe that it was just this cute little thing. It didn't feel scary or malicious at all. I distinctly remember that as soon as I blinked, it vanished, and I literally spoke out loud and said very clearly, "If that was you, you are so cute." And then I fell back to sleep. A week or so later, my grandfather ended up having his work phone go missing around 20 minutes before he had to leave for work. He was searching everywhere around the house. I checked the couch, under the cushions, under the actual couch. I checked the closets. I helped him check under his bed, in his closet, everywhere. Eventually, while he, myself, and my grandma were searching for his phone, I came up with the idea to go into my room and talk to the thing that had messed with my phone the weeks before. I told him that if he took his phone, he needed to return it right now. And it was very important that he had it, and that this entity couldn't mess with anyone's electronics in the house. Then I checked the couch again. Suddenly, the phone was there, sitting under the middle of the couch in pretty plain sight. It wasn't there before, and I'm sure of it because I checked that exact spot before I talked to the thing I thought was hanging out in my room. A few days later, I decided to sage. Not to get rid of what was messing with the phones, just as a routine I do every 6 to 8 weeks, to keep stuff that I don't want in my house away. I figured it wouldn't chase away the entity that I saw because it didn't feel bad, and I only ask negative entities to leave. But I guess the entity decided it had overstayed its welcome, because I haven't seen it again, and none of our electronics or other belongings have been moved or played with since. So this happened just last week, and some events leading up to it came from my housemates' accounts of what they saw, heard and felt. It started with housemate T, who was the first to report something. Out of all the people in the house, I'm the only one who really believes or gives much merit to the supernatural. But recently something happened that spooked my other two housemates pretty bad. One night, T was in bed. I don't know what time, he didn't mention. He swore he saw the lamp on his dresser move. He even went as far as to tell my other roommate Kay, about this. So Kay brushes it off, says it's probably nothing. He just imagined it as in the dark. Admittedly, it's not much, but I feel like it was the first step in what would come. A few nights later, I'm asleep with my dog and suddenly I wake up. My dog wasn't reacting, and I honestly wasn't sure she was awake at that moment. But I opened my eyes and glanced down at my bed, and about 2.5, maybe 3 feet from me was this dark shape. It didn't look human like a shadow person. It looked very inhuman. It was a shadow, but it seemed like it was craggy and very black. I only saw it for about 2 seconds before my bedroom door burst open. I literally yelled, "What the fuck?" Only to see my housemate Kay standing at my door, asking if I was okay. I told her yeah, I was asleep. I didn't even think to mention what I had just seen. She told me she heard what sounded like someone retching or throwing up from her room. She didn't just hear it once either. Kay said the first time she heard it, it woke her up, and she wasn't entirely sure she actually did hear it. Kay decided since she woke up to use the bathroom, and apparently while she was in there, she heard the noise again, clear as anything, which is why she came to check on me. She thought maybe I was really sick. I told her I was fine, it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't my dog, because I've heard she gets sick in the middle of the night, and I always wake up when it happens. At this point, my dog is definitely awake, but not acting strange. She never does when stuff like this happens. Kay accepts what I say and goes back to bed. And as I'm laying on my bed in the dark, I just have this really unsettled feeling. But I manage to get back to sleep and think nothing of it the rest of the day. About a day or two later, however, I'm in the kitchen getting myself a drink or something, and Kay and I are alone in the house. All of a sudden, Kay calls to me from the other side of the house, and I go over to see what she needs. I get to her room, and she tells me she feels like she needs me to see this. Otherwise, I wouldn't believe her. I give her a quizzical look and follow her into her room. A porcelain doll I had given her about 3 years ago had fallen about 3 feet away from its place on top of a curio Kay in her room, with other 4 or so porcelain dolls, all of which hadn't moved an inch. She gives me this wide-eyed look and says she was in the shower and nowhere near the doll. She didn't even hear it fall. But when she came out, the doll was on the floor. Nothing had bumped it. The doll hadn't been recently moved or anything. And because it sits in a position where its legs are folded under it, the doll itself should be pretty stable. She was pretty spooked, and I took the opportunity to explain what I thought I saw the other night before she came into my room. It felt unsafe to be talking about it in the house though, and Kay insisted we just leave for a little while and get out. Once we were in the car and driving away, it felt okay to talk about it, and I mentioned to Kay that feeling of hesitance I had at saying anything about it in the house, and Kay said she felt the same, scared to talk about it while we were in there. We got home after about 2 hours of staying out and away. We saged the whole place together, and since then, nothing else has happened. I don't know why, but it seems like we just randomly get these paranormal encounters every few months, especially if I haven't saged in a while. My family had just moved out of our very first house in Arizona, due to having a small space for us 4 siblings, 2 brothers, 1 sister, to a nice 4-bedroom home with a huge backyard, and lots of living space for all the kids to have fun, have friends over, etc. I was 8 or 9 at the time, the day we moved in, so I wasn't much help for my parents carrying stuff from the moving truck. All I wanted to do was grab stuff for my room, because that's all I cared about at the time. My brothers, who were older than me, wanted to share a room, and my sister and I got our own rooms, which was so nice at first, because I was able to not be annoyed by my brothers while trying to sleep or having friends over. The first item I had brought into the house was a green silk/mesh type lamp that I was in love with for some reason, so I wanted that in my room first before anything else to claim which room was mine. I quickly ran inside with my lamp and sprinted to the first room on the left of the hallway, and I knew it was the room for me. Perfect size room for activities with friends, or even to play with Legos and other toys. I quickly found an outlet in the corner of the room to plug in this magnificent lamp into the wall. As I'm plugging in the lamp, I hear someone whispering behind me, and I thought it was my brother, so I say back to him, "Hold on, I'm fixing my lamp." As I turn around, I see no one behind me, so I quickly get up and look down the hallway and through the rooms. No one to be found. I walk outside of the moving truck, and my whole family is out there sorting stuff around. I asked my brothers if they had come in and said something to me while I was in my room, and they both laughed and said no. I totally thought they were joking with me, so I left it alone, not thinking anything of it. A couple weeks passed by, and we're finally fully settled into our new home. What a relief, doing nothing except make my room look awesome. I hadn't done any exploring of the house really, because I was too busy making my room perfect. It was finally time to see what cool features this house had for 8 or 9-year-old me. The first thing I noticed was an extra bedroom wallpapers of Mickey Mouse and Disneyland with an old feel to it. It was a room attached to the carport we had on the other side of the house. A tool room connected to it also. My parents had put all the extra boxes and cleaning supplies in the old creepy looking room. I asked my parents, what did they, brothers, share a room if there's one right there? And they didn't give me an answer. They told me to not talk about the storage room and only to go in there to get the carport. I agreed and moved on. From the laundry room, there was the kitchen, and the previous owners had extended the house out another 800 or 900 square feet, with a massive game room next to the dining area and kitchen. From the gaming room was our outside area, covering over a half an acre with a small little shed/shack in the corner, and a treehouse that seemed very old and run down. On the other side of the game room was a little room with a fireplace, great to hang around during the holidays. And next to that was the living room. Overall, it was a huge house for me at the time. I was so happy. I had a lot of room to run around and be a stupid little kid. A couple months passed by, and the family is doing well. I had gone to a new school and met some good friends that actually lived in the same neighborhood as me, so we obviously became best friends, since we could easily have sleepovers and whatnot. One night on the weekend, my best friend had slept over. We started off by playing a video game in my room, and he had asked me what's wrong with my closet door. And we had investigated it, and turns out it had been off center on the slide, so I fixed it. But while I was in the closet, I had noticed a tiny little door that went into the bottom of my house. I noticed it was held in with nails, so I barely pulled it and it came right off. My friend had a mini flashlight he liked carrying around, so we used that to look inside. I could see where the bathroom was, because I could see the pipes and even the bathtub. It was dark and really creepy, and just had a bad feeling about opening up that little door. It made me get chills down my neck, because it just had a different type of atmosphere once I looked inside and used the flashlight to look around. I told my friend to help me put the little door back on, so we could get back to having fun playing times. Little did we know, we had just let something out. We had moved to the game room since we were being loud and didn't want to wake up my parents or siblings. We had a huge TV in the game room, so we were just having fun playing Halo and Call of Duty. Our game room had windows all around it, looking into our backyard. My friend and I were playing games, and all of a sudden, we heard tapping on the window. And at first, I thought it was my cat messing around with a hanging cord from the blinds. I ignored it. It happened again, but from a different window. My friend had asked me to go get my cat. When we turned around from my couch, my cat wasn't in the room with us, so we both got a weird feeling that something wasn't right. We ignored it once again. Finally, after hearing it for a third time, we'd go investigate the noise. My friend and I both got up and went to the back of the room to look outside the window through a small crack in the blinds. We had seen nothing at all except a tree and could maybe barely hit the window with a branch. We debated on whether it was the tree or not for a couple of minutes, but then all of a sudden, my friend froze. I asked him, "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. I kept asking and asking. He finally replied, "Look at your shed." And I looked. There, I saw two faint, glowing eyes looking right over at us. We both dashed from the window and onto the couch. We were frightened, but didn't want to wake up my parents because we would have probably gotten into trouble doing so. We just started coming up with ideas of what it could have possibly been. We had so many, so eventually we let it go and played more games until we passed out. Another couple of months passed with no little to noise or creepy things happening to me. I felt normal for once. Until one night, I was going to sleep in my room, and I usually kept my door open just so my cat could get in, and he had walked right in, and I couldn't really see him because he was a black cat, and my room was obviously dark, so all I could do was hear him. I heard him walk in and look around like any other cat would do. Then I heard him do something to my closet door. At least I think it was him to this day. He had opened my closet door just enough to walk inside and then silence. I thought to myself, he's just exploring, it's fine. I slept it off. The next morning, I had woken up to my closet door being open almost halfway. I went to close it, but I noticed the little door in the corner of the closet had been taken off and put to the side, as if someone had placed it there. I went to ask my whole family if they had gone into my room last night or this morning. They all said no. I ignored it once again and tried coming up with dumb ideas as to what it could have been. I put the little door back on and went on with my day. The same thing happened the next night. Cat walks in, opens the closet, and is silent. The morning, same thing with the little door in the closet, set up on the side of the wall with the blackness of the underground of the house completely visible. At this point, I knew it was my brothers messing with me or my parents working on the house or something. Both of them denied it was them. At this point, I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. No one else was having these things happen to them. I felt alone. My best friend had come over again, and this time, his mum had dropped him off instead of him walking. As they both stepped inside of the house, the mother had said, "This feels very dark. I cannot be in this house." As she says this, her car, obviously in park, starts rolling down the little driveway we have. We all run after it and see that it's still in the park position. How could this even be possible? She instantly left and had never come back. That was the first time my parents had thought something that didn't sound right with the house. They obviously shook it off. The rest of the night felt normal and good since I had my friend over. Of course, all of the noises that I had heard up to this point were nonsense. I totally ignored everything, thinking it was all a lie. Well, I thought wrong. Another couple of weeks pass, and it feels darker and darker in my house. I no longer feel it's just my family in this home. I get scared all the time, and just feel like I have to be next to my parents all the time. I thought maybe I should have another friend come over. I'll try to have fun. So I invited a friend that was on my football team. He had been dropped off, and we watched movies and played games all night in the living room because I knew he would get scared in the game room, knowing my experience. My brother was on the same team as us, so he was also friends with him, so we all hung out having fun. It was becoming late in the night, so we all decided we would sleep in the living room together. My parents had brought out an air mattress for one of us to sleep on. I slept on the little couch closest to the kitchen/walk-in area. My brother slept on the air mattress, and our friend had slept on the larger couch on the other side of the room. The room itself was not too big, so we all basically were sleeping close to each other. My friend's couch touched mine, so there was a gap in the corner of the room with an empty space, and the air mattress was touching both couches almost. It was late, around 11 p.m, when we decided to go to sleep. We finished up whatever movie we were watching and went to bed. My brother and my friend both fell asleep very quickly. About 30 to 45 minutes after we had gone to sleep, I called their names and both didn't answer, assuming they were asleep. I was wide awake and couldn't sleep. While laying there, I heard a little girl crying and saying, "Dad, Dad." I thought it was my sister. She usually cried due to having nightmares. I ignored it and thought it would be resolved. Once again, a couple of minutes later, I heard it again, only to realize it was getting closer to the living room. I was scared, so I woke up my brother and told him to listen. Obviously, right when I wake him up, it stops. He got mad at me and went back to sleep. It happened a third time, and it was even closer. I thought I was going crazy, so I ignored it and thought of happy things. It kind of helped. It made me fall asleep. Randomly, at 3 a.m, I woke up, wide awake. The room should have been dark, but it was somewhat bright. Bright enough to where I could see my brother and my friend clear as day. And the weird part, they were both awake. I could see their eyes open. We had all woken up at 3 a.m. randomly, without waking each other up. They both were in front of me, so I could see them before they saw me. Eventually, they both realized they were awake and looked at me. They started crying for some reason. I thought, what the hell's going on with them? They were frozen and crying, looking over at me. I asked them, what are you guys doing? And my brother finally told me, don't move, but look in the corner of the couches slowly. I was already panicking, and still get chills writing this today. I look in between the couches, and there was a girl, probably around 5'1", in a white, old dress. Brown hair, green eyes, cut up face, bruised neck and body, glowing, and looking right at me. Eyes wide open, and her nasty teeth were showing. Just gazing at me with a grin on her face. I was frozen. I couldn't tell or scream or anything. I was in paralysis. It was the longest 2 minutes of my life. I would blink, and she was still on the inside of my eyelids. I was so afraid. Eventually, she disappeared, and we all got up and woke my parents up. We had explained what had happened, and the next morning, we had a priest come and bless the house. After we had the priest bless our house, it felt lighter and just in a better mood. I had stopped hearing noises and feeling anxiety and nervousness all the time. I don't know exactly what I saw, but it's still the scariest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I still cannot explain some of the things I've seen and can't puzzle them together either. The one room the priest did not go into was the extra bedroom with the Mickey Mouse wallpaper. Was it on purpose? Could he feel that he couldn't bless that room due to the demonic presence that he couldn't handle? Was it the little girl's room? I never went through that room again. A couple years later, we moved out of that house. So I was about 16 years old, and at that time, very interested in ghosts and paranormal things, etc. My mom is highly esoteric and can see things in or around other humans. So her being so sensitive for those things did wake my interest even more. So I went online and researched ways to communicate with energies or spirits, and found out a way to do so. I invited my sister and 2 of our neighbor kids to help and watch. We waited for my mother to leave, because she is specifically prohibited from ever communicating with the other world. We wrote letters and numbers, and also yes and no on a paper, cropped them out and arranged them in a circle. We lowered the shutters in my room and lit candles and placed them in different places in my room. Me and my sister placed our hands on an upside down drinking glass, and the neighbor kids watched from bed. The first few times they laughed and chuckled when we said phrases like, "Is someone here who wants to talk with us?" Or, "If you want to communicate, please do that." After a few minutes, the candles started to flicker. I didn't think much of it, because candles flicker usually. But after some time, some of them really started to freak me out. They started to look like someone was trying to blow them out. And the glass started moving. I looked at my sister, and she looked at me, simultaneously asking if the other one was pushing it. We both got really freaked out, so we took our hands off the glass, and that frickin' thing moved on its own. I got a panic attack, and we all screamed and ran to my door to get out. I pressed the handle of my door down, but that thing didn't move a bit. My sister and the neighbor kids started to help pressing it down. We leaned on it with all our body weight combined, but it didn't move an inch. The candle started to go out, and we just screamed and screamed. Eventually it opened, and we ran into the kitchen in a corner and just cried. From this day on, I didn't sleep well in my house because I felt watched all the time, and my writing desk chair started moving on its own. My mum also noticed that my room didn't feel right, like something lurks inside of it, and asked me if I did something stupid. Eventually I told her, and she was furious, saying that I could have brought much more evil in our apartment than a spirit that amuses itself by disturbing us. She did a ritual in my room, saying a few phrases, putting a protective circuit on it and smoking it out with sage, and I was never disturbed by it again. Nonetheless, I'll never do that again. This is not my first time having something like this happen to me, but it's the first time it's happened to my girlfriend. It's 2:37 a.m. and I just got home from dropping my girlfriend off at her house. I've had the feeling of someone watching me since around noon yesterday. Then when I went to pick her up to go at Walmart around 9:45, when I got to her house, she lives in a really nice mobile park home. I was waiting for her in my car with the windows down for a few minutes. I was reading on my phone when I kind of saw someone walk by my car wearing dark clothing out of the corner of my eye. I didn't look up from reading until a few seconds later. I didn't see anyone in my rearview mirrors, but I could still hear footsteps on the pavement. I even turned around and saw no one there. They didn't go into another house because the 2 lots across the street are empty. I kind of got creeped out. Finally, a few minutes later, Emily came outside to let the dogs into the backyard before we left. So I got out of the car and had a cigarette with her. And while we were talking and waiting for the dogs to do their business, we heard this noise next door, like bricks falling. I may have screamed a little, but the bricks her neighbour has stacked up next to his flower bed had all fallen down, and his Virgin Mary statue had fallen and her head was broken off. We both walked over to look because it startled both of us, and we worried her neighbour may have fallen inside the mobile home and caused the bricks to shift. She went closer, I stayed on her driveway, and she got in front of his house and she looked up from where the bricks had fallen, and her neighbour was peeking out the window right at her. He didn't know what the noise was and was looking out the window and then saw her. He thought she made the noise. He came out and was like, "What's going on?" So we told him his bricks had fallen and his Mary statue had broken, and he said he'd look into it in the morning. That's when I told her about the person walking by my car right before she came out of the house. That freaked her out a bit. So we went to take the dogs inside. Her chihuahua, Squirt, basically jumped into my arms when I went to pet him, and he was shaking. And her other dog wanted to get back in the house. Didn't even come to see me like he usually does. They were scared to death. I don't have any idea what happened. All I know is we got the dog settled in the house and we went to Walmart. On the way, she kept looking in my back seat and touching her neck and never letting go of my hand. I asked her what's up, and she said something touched her neck several times. Then she told me that she had a feeling like someone was watching her since she got home from work at 8:30 p.m. All I can think of is that my back seat is my tarot cards. I literally just cleaned them last week and haven't touched them since. Tonight, we're going to burn sage in her house when she gets home from work. My girlfriend lives in a nice trailer park about 5 minutes away from I live. We're in a suburb of St. Petersburg, Florida. Where she lives, there's a lot of old and elderly people and not a lot of people our age. And a few of the trailers in the park are not occupied because it's mainly snowbirds. I've been with my girlfriend Emily for just about 6 months. We just found out her mom, who lives in another state, was given 6 months to live. And of course, Emily was upset. So she asked me to come over and eat a late dinner with her. I got there around 1:30 a.m. on Friday. We have dinner, hang out, and talk, and I rub her back, etc. When she's ready to go to bed, I'm leaving, and we're hugging, and she gives me a really sweet kiss and thanks me for coming over to be with her. When she backs up, I see this old man standing in the yard 2 doors down, where no one lives, giving us a look like he's disgusted with seeing PDA at 5:30 in the morning. So I say something along the lines of, "We're being watched, babe." She turns around and I'm still looking at the old man. When she turned to look, he basically turned around and walked around the side of the house. But she should have seen him walking, but she just said, "Are you sure? The guy that lived there died and his wife moved back to Maine a few months ago. See, she put it up for sale." And she pointed to the for sale sign in front. I swore up and down I saw the guy, and she said she believes me. I described the man I saw, and she confirmed that's what the man who passed away looked like, down to his khaki overalls and light blue plaid short sleeve button-up shirt and brown ball cap. It's not the first time I've seen people that she couldn't see, and she doesn't make fun of me. I've had 2 dreams since that night, and he's been in them in the background, staring like I saw him the other day. For about 4 years now, I've been having repeated dreams about a mysterious man who always looks the same and feels the same every time I dream about him. The thing is, I've never met or seen this person in real life. These dreams feel deeper than others I've had in the past. I usually have new dreams involving him every 2 weeks or so, and they're not usually back to back. I'm a young adult and very introverted, so I've never had any romantic relationships before, and have never been romantic towards someone in my life. I'm not really into that stuff, to be honest. And yet, I can feel that this man in my dreams has such strong romantic feelings towards me, and I reciprocate these feelings towards him. It feels like a very deep connection where we don't even need to speak to know the depth of love we have for each other. I've never felt anything like that in real life. He's very distinct looking, and his features are as such. Very big, bright green eyes. Once in a while wears black glasses. Jet black hair. Very tall. Often wears a big, green, comfy sweater. And he looks and feels like a giant teddy bear. Someone very warm and soft. Kinda sweet. That type of thing. Every time I look at him in the dream, he's always looking directly at me. He also never turns his back on me and never looks away from me. He's always facing towards me and looking at me first before I look at him in every dream. And the way he looks at me is what I can only imagine how someone in love would look at the person they love. He'll often just be around me and be nearby. He usually doesn't speak, just smiles and sits or stands close to me. He almost radiates this energy of love and content. It's a very peaceful feeling whenever he's around. The dreams are very symbolic too. I once had a dream where he and I were in a garden. I saw the exact same two blue monarch butterflies flying around each other like a pair. Monarch butterflies that are blue apparently don't exist in the real world, upon doing some research. I put my hand out and one of them flew over to me and landed on my finger. I then showed the mysterious man and exclaimed, "Look, there's two of them." He then looked at it and smiled at me, then gestured towards an open door just behind him. I let the butterfly on my finger fly back to the other butterfly and took the man's hand to walk with him through the door. Then the dream ended. That dream is a couple of months old, but it still sticks with me to this day. All of this makes me wonder if this mysterious dream person exists out there somewhere, or if they're actually a ghost or spirit who visits me in my dreams. For about 4 years now, I've been having repeated dreams about a mysterious man who always looks the same and feels the same every time I dream about him. The thing is, I've never met or seen this person in real life. These dreams feel deeper than others I've had in the past. I'm a young adult and very introverted, so I've never had any romantic relationships before, and I've never been romantic towards someone in my life. I'm not really into that stuff, to be honest. Anyways, I had this dream with this man in it again. It was set in an enchanted forest surrounded by tall trees. We were also away from regular society where no one could find us. The colours in this dream were so crisp, clear and vivid. I was inside of a medieval modest cottage that was cosy with warm colours around. A warm bright fireplace, a comfy couch and a table with lots of books on top. With wood and stone walls and torches on those walls. It had a beautiful interior that felt safe and comfortable. Homey. I was standing in the middle of the room in a medieval dress, just taking in my surroundings. Then in enters this mysterious man again. He entered from a white painted cottage door and then closed it. Upon seeing him, I somehow already knew that we were in a relationship and were living together. And he had just walked in from tending to the garden outside and doing yard work in the summer sun. Almost as if this was a routine for him. He saw me looking at him and then looked right back at me. Every time I look at him in a dream, he's always looking directly at me. But the way he looks at me is what I can only imagine how someone in love would look at the person they love. He had a lovely smile, the one where you can see the person's eyes squint because they're just so genuinely happy. I observed him and he was tall and stood firm, relaxed, gentle and comfortable. He had long jet black hair that went slightly past his shoulders, and was wearing black gardening gloves on his hands. He also wore Victorian black Wellington boots to avoid getting mud on his shoes. He approached me, and I saw him up close. He had beautiful green eyes like he always does in every dream. He also always has black hair, but it's usually shorter. Generally in dreams before or after this point, he'll often just be around me and be nearby. He usually doesn't speak, just smiles and sits or stands close to me. He almost radiates this energy of love and content. It's a very peaceful feeling whenever he's around. Anyways, he did end up speaking to me. He didn't say a word, but he spoke to me through my mind. The term being telepathy, I believe. He repeatedly said to me in my head, "I'm a vampire," for about a minute straight. However, I wasn't afraid of him because he wasn't a monster to me. I felt such strong romantic feelings towards him, and he reciprocates these feelings towards myself. It feels like a very deep connection where we don't even need to speak to how the depth of love we have for each other. I've never felt anything like that in real life. Then suddenly, his eyes turned a different colour, or a mix of colours I should say. His eyes changed from green to bright orange. That orange colour was in the centre of his eye. Then he had a yellow colour that outlined the outer rim of his eye, and a red colour that outlined the inner rim of his eye. It was very strange, but I remember saying to him, "I've never seen eyes like yours before," and just stared at him for a long time. He then proceeded to smile and gave him a big hug and a quick kiss. That's when I woke up. So basically, I was in a happy, committed relationship with a vampire. Not sure what it all means, but I thought it was pretty cool to share. I've recently moved back into my childhood home with my partner because my parents are now living in long-term care. I didn't have any strange experiences growing up, but for many years, my mom has seen a dark shadow figure hovering in a bed. For this reason, she started drinking alcohol every night to fall asleep in her late 60s and continued for nearly a decade until going into long-term care this year. I never believed these stories as mom was diagnosed with dementia around that time. But my partner and I had moved into the house with her around 8 years, while my parents had separated, and each one of us has had weird experiences at that time. Mom was visiting family, and he and I were alone in the house for a few weeks. I had been briefly locked in the basement by something holding the doorknob, and my partner had the garden hose water tap turn off on him while holding it to water the garden. He was in sight of the tap, in a fencing yard, with no one else home. Fast forward 8 years, and he and I have moved into the house in July 2022. Strange things happened almost immediately. The house needs a complete renovation, and we've been spending our leisure time in the backyard with one big inconvenience. There are no electrical plugs outside, so we ran extension cords and used flashlights. Since moving in, our flashlights are turning on by themselves almost daily, and we're using a ton of batteries. This was causing many arguments in the beginning, with both of us adamant we weren't leaving them on. My parents were basically hoarding flashlights, and I don't even know how many we have. But they are of every size and style, so it's definitely not a defect or manufacturing problem. I figured out what was happening in mid-August, when different types of flashlights were turning on near me while my partner wasn't home. I started leaving different types of flashlights in my line of sight and checking them periodically. Sometimes they'd turn on 4 or 5 times during the span of an afternoon. Sometimes in the same one over and over, and other times it's different ones turning on once. This even happened with our safety flashlight in the car while parked in the driveway. Up until this week, the flashlights were only doing the daytime thing with me, but I was on holiday. And now that I'm back at work, it started happening to my partner. He's noticed multiple types of flashlight turning on while left untouched on shelves in the garage. Other strange things happening include water taps inside the house just being on when we walk in. Sometimes it's only cold or hot water, and sometimes it's both. But it's always on full blast, and loud enough that you can't miss it or not notice leaving the water on because it's loud. When I'm alone, I keep seeing a shadow person in the corner of my eye, but no one's there when I look. Interestingly, this doesn't happen if my cat and or dog are near me. This happened 3 days after my mom passed away from sepsis, pneumonia, and brain cancer. January 3rd, 2021. Sleep wasn't an easy thing to come by right after losing your mother, and I finally must have started to fall asleep from exhaustion. You know that state between awake and asleep? I remember it feeling very similar to that. The difference was I felt really plugged into that state of being. Like all time had stopped and someone had paused the moment between being awake and asleep to visit me. I felt a familiar presence I immediately recognized as my mom's. And some of the more pressing feelings I remember from my mom's side was she didn't have a lot of time to talk. She knew I needed her, and I could only ask yes or no questions. The conversation went something like, "Are you mad at me for how things turned out?" "No." "Could I have done anything different to help save you?" "No." "Is everything going to be okay?" "Yes." Then I felt like I couldn't waste this opportunity to just talk with her, and began asking what I should do about my older sister. I remember feeling rushed, like I had to say goodbye in 3 seconds. I felt like I broke the one rule in that state of being, the one thing that if you did, you would be sent back to your reality. I woke up and was more at peace with it. I ate for the first time, and that night I slept a lot better. I still always try to make that connection, but it's been almost 2 years, and I haven't had any luck. When I was around 7, we had guests visiting, so my 2 brothers and I shared a big bedroom. There were 2 beds and 1 fold-out cot. Everyone went to bed, and all was normal. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, my brother woke me up, freaking out a little, and said, "Something's not right," and told me to look around. When I looked around the moonlit room, all the furniture was moved all over the place, including the bed I was sleeping in. I then got up, wandered around the room in awe, trying to figure out how my brothers could have moved all this heavy shit and me not waking up. I looked over and saw my older brother asleep on his bed, which was now on the other side of the room as well. Dressers were all off the wall and in the middle of the room. Basically, everything was in a new place that made no sense. I told my brother we need to wake up our other one, and he didn't think we would go over well because he would freak the fuck out, so we decided not to. Now I know what you're thinking at this point. Not rocket science, you got pranked, but this is where things get way weirder. My first thought after seeing the room was that we needed to turn the lights on. One problem with that, the switches were completely gone. Yes, as in they had disappeared. So now both of us are starting to freak out. Only light we had, which was actually pretty good, was moonlight. Coming in through the windows, as well as a street light that gave us decent visibility. Either way, this was the point I knew it wasn't a joke. But wait, it gets weirder. At this point, we just needed to get out of that room. Something was definitely wrong. We both looked for the door, searched all the walls, and that was gone as well. We were now trapped and losing it at this point. Not only was the bedroom door gone, but the closets as well. This went on for about 5 minutes. We tried everything, pushed on walls, ran round in circles yelling. There was nothing we could do. At the point of almost giving up, totally perplexed and confused, I turned around and the actual door suddenly reappeared on the wall that I just searched and ran my hands across. My brother took advantage of the opportunity and rushed into the hallway to the top of the stairs, screaming to our parents whose bedroom was downstairs. My mother rushed to the bottom, asking why we're going crazy with guests in the house in the middle of the night. When we told her what was happening, she didn't believe us. We told her to come look, but when we both turned around and looked back in the room, everything was back in its original location, including my other brother, still sleeping like a log on the cot. Anyways, today me and my brother are professionals, and he chooses not to talk about it with anyone but me behind closed doors. When I bring it up, he gets uncomfortable, sighs and shakes his head, and doesn't really want to revisit it.